name is Dr. Sean Wise. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship here at the Ted Rogers School of Management. I'm also the director of Startup School, so if you've been enjoying yourself, I'm glad. Startup School is part of Ryerson's contribution to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Toronto. These are free lectures. They can be attended by students, by founders, by alumni, by parents, by people from U of T. We do not discriminate from who attends, but you're all welcome to. Tonight I'm going to be talking about investor presentations, investor pitches, and in particular, different types of investors and what they look for. Everything I say tonight is my own knowledge. As I'll tell you in a minute, I have a background in this space, but nothing I say represents the university or the digital media zone where I spend a lot of my time. I've been an entrepreneur since 13. That's now 32 years ago. I've taken my first company public at 30. I've been a venture capitalist since 1999 in New York. I spent Web 2.0 in the Valley. In 2008, I left my venture fund, Spencer Trask, out of New York, to come to Ryerson to teach entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. And to start up our own fund. If you're not aware, Ryerson has a seed fund called Ryerson Futures. Our mandate, more or less, is to do 50 investments of $50,000 over 5 years. We're part of the DMZ in that we work with a lot of those companies, but we also bring in companies from the outside. I spent 5 seasons working behind the scenes on the show Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, if you've ever seen it. As you'll see from one of the clips tonight, I was asked originally to be a dragon, but then they told me I had a face for radio. So if we're done being interrupted, we can begin. So the idea of investor pitching is the one close to my heart. On Dragon's Den, I did all of the coaching before the first few seasons contestants, as well as in my own capacity, I've seen about 21,000 pitches. So over the last decade and a half, I've been watching people ask for money, and some were successful and some were not. Tonight, I'm going to try to cover 5 main areas: an introduction to investment, a little bit about the elevator pitch, a key tool most entrepreneurs use, talk a little bit about investor slides, what people expect, what they're looking to find out. We'll talk a little bit about principles of pitching, some things that you may not have thought of, remind you of some things you have thought of. I've been asked to identify half a dozen big mistakes that people make every day that you can improve. And then we're going to take a small break, hopefully serve you guys some food, and then we can have an open discussion, question and answer off the camera, where you guys can ask anything you want. My background, as I've said, is in the investment community. Quick show of hands, how many people are full-time students? Okay. How many people are working on a startup? Okay. How many people think they need outside money? Okay, well, we're going to talk about whether you do or you don't. We're going to talk about, I'm sorry, you're late, you can't join us. That's what happens when you don't show up on time. Thank you. So when you start with the investor pitching, you really have to understand it's much more than just a 1-minute kind of discussion. It is something you're going to be judged on. Most people will only meet a dozen investors in their life, but every investor meets a dozen entrepreneurs a week. Doesn't matter where you go, people are pitching you. I can be in the airport bathroom and someone gives me an elevator pitch. Someone tries to convince me to write a check, and I'm fairly unknown. My colleagues, Kevin O'Leary, Robert Herjavec, they can't go anywhere until people are throwing them business plans. So startup pitching isn't just about what you have to say, it's about how you do it, how you target, who you deal with, and why. Yeah. The idea is that this is a small sampling. It's equivalent to if you have an appetizer, you know if you like it or not. All of the startup pitching is about little teeny bite-sized morsels being given out to the person eating them at a time, one at a time, right? Investors are always looking for the same information, whether it's in a business plan or a business model canvas or a lean canvas or slideshow or a video or Dragon's Den. They're really focused on sort of 5 key issues. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why are you attacking this problem? How well do you know this problem? Why are you an expert? Where does your insight come from? What is it that you do? Are you creating a product, a service, a solution? Whom do you serve with that product, service, or solution? Who is your customer segment? Why are you solving that problem? And most importantly, how do you deliver it, and who benefits from it? People are looking in today's day and age for a deeper understanding, even from the early days of a pitch. The first thing that everyone needs to understand is that most investors hear dozens of pitches a week. So you have to cut through the noise very, very quickly. In the first 90 seconds to sort of 2-3 minutes, I can tell if this person has done the required research, is in my space where I'm interested in, and whether I should be listening for the next 45 minutes. Most investors aren't that polite. As soon as you are outside of the sort of area they focus on, they just stop engaging with you. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is doing less pitches, but doing smarter pitches. Focusing on those people who are actually in a position to help you succeed. Not pitching people too early, not too late. But it all begins with an elevator pitch. This elevator pitch is that sort of short little summary of what you do that captures intention. Now, when we teach it in class, I like to break it down to 2 parts. Usually there's a problem statement or a pain statement, and it's usually followed by a value proposition. Why do I start with the elevator pitch? Because it seems like a very easy thing to do, but if you've never pitched investors, if you've never practiced it, it really identifies some weaknesses. This elevator pitch helps investors understand who you're targeting and your level of knowledge of why you target them. If you get it right, you really capture people's attention. If you get it wrong, it shows that you aren't prepared to work with that investor. So let me show you a couple examples that I think are very telling. So raise your hands when you know which product we're talking about. People want to have sex longer than our bodies will allow. Our blue aspirin-sized tablet allows them to do so in come on, you know what we're talking about, to an FDA approved manner with no side effects. So you're talking, of course, about Viagra. But you'll notice in this pitch, we never talked about the chemical composition. We never talked about the biological functions. We talked about what it is, who gets helped by it, and how big is the problem. And we gave it in a very storytelling feedback way. Here's another example. One person's trash is another person's treasure. Our online global garage sale brings together buyers and sellers from around the world through a trust-based platform. It's eBay, right? Or you could talk about Craigslist in some cases. But the idea is that your elevator pitch immediately informs investors or anyone you're pitching to that you understand both sides of the market, what the problem is and what the solution is. And it allows people to focus on whether this is in their sweet spot. So for instance, I do seed stage investing for software and digital products. So I'm the first money in. You can tell that by looking me up on the internet, by looking at my portfolio of investments. So I already know that this Viagra isn't for me because I don't do biotechnology, I don't do pharmaceuticals. But that eBay seems more interesting to me. But what's really important about the elevator pitch is if I hear 10 entrepreneurs a day, the one that pitches properly is the one that I remember best and the one that I'm able to go forward with. So when you start your elevator pitch, you want to make sure you don't fall into any of these typical problems. Too broad, talks about helping everyone. Too bland, has no excitement. Not taking into account that the elevators are usually only 10 floors big. Not targeted. Many people think you use the same pitch, elevator pitch or slides, for every investor. It's not true. You customize your pitch for each person you're talking to. You base it on what they need. In late 1920s, Dale Carnegie was famous for saying, no one cares about you, they care about themselves. So don't go to sell people stuff, understand what they're buying. And that is the number one rule that people don't understand when it comes to investors. They don't do enough research on talking to the person beforehand. They don't do enough understanding of what their focus, what their investment thesis is. They just do the same pitch 50 times hoping it sticks. Spend less time being broad and more time narrowly focused on who you're pitching. When you start this, the key to the elevator pitch, of course, is to use a memorable analogy. People want to have sex. It's really hard to argue with that. I'm sure there's a handful of Buddhist monks somewhere that probably don't, but in general, that covers off a large number of people. One of the keys that you should always try to do is use third-party validation. The reason is simple. In 5 seasons of Dragon's Den, I've never seen someone tell me their company sucks or it's a bad idea to invest in them. It's always the greatest deal since Google or Facebook. People don't have a realistic understanding of what else is out there and how good their deal is. So they tend to overemphasize what they think is important. That's why third-party validation is very important when it comes to presenting to investors. Not so much in the elevator pitch, but as throughout your whole presentation. You want to be able to provide objective data points that allow people to confirm what you have to say, before they just have to take your word for it. When you go to craft that elevator pitch, you should start by gathering some key facts, use one of the templates that I've provided for you, and then take it out to the market. If your brother doesn't get it, if your dog doesn't get it, if your friends at school don't get it, keep refining it. You're going to use your elevator pitch multiple times each and every day. So build it, measure the impact, how many people understood what I said, and then learn from that. Keep repeating this learn, build, measure, this build, measure, learn circle until you get it right. So when I go to get started, when I try to help people, and again, this is the start of the conversations. We'll get into elevator pitches versus slide decks and presentations, but I want you to understand that if you can't explain your business in 2 minutes or less, it's unlikely the investor can resonate with it. It's unlikely they can understand what you're pitching. That's why on Dragon's Den you never see any high engineering concepts, some nanotubes or radiation therapy devices, because it's over the population's normal understanding. You want to ground it in what you do and whom it helps. You want to focus on the benefits, not on the technology. Right? So you might want to start by listing the pain that your solution is working to solve. 4 out of 5 users don't buy product X because of Y. Other solutions take 10 times as long to do the same thing as us. Our model shows the same result, but unlike the model, say, Word had for Microsoft, ours is free, Google Docs. Many firms lose $100,000 because of this problem. You want to start by helping the investor understand how big the issue is. You want to start with objective facts. The market for aspirin is $2 billion. 200,000 people a day suffer from this. You want to list objective facts that show that you know what your customer base is. 10,000 users signed up in week 1. We have $1 million revenue, double last year's. You want to make sure that you focus on things that people can understand. I'm not sure if you're old enough, but there used to be a game called Libs, where you would randomly choose words and fill them into scripts and then laugh at how funny they were. At least if you were in grade 3, it was pretty funny. You can do the same thing to create your elevator pitch. Hi, my name is Cleo. I'm with Startup School. Startup School offers just-in-time learning in a modular way, focused on entrepreneurs, not just students. We're like the Netflix for great education. And what we're trying to do is help startup founders get access to the business knowledge they need. That's Startup School. We hope you'll join us. There's another template. My company is X, and it's developing Y to help audience A solve problem X with secret sauce Z. These are all used constantly by many different companies to explain in 1 minute or less what it is you're trying to accomplish. And if you can't capture investor interest in that sort of time frame, you're not likely going to capture it over an hour. There is something known in the industry as the 10 magic slides. You can Google it and see thousands of examples. No matter what startup you have, these are the slides investors, from angel investors to private equity, from public markets to private markets, are expecting to see. They were called the 10 magic slides by Guy Kawasaki, who was the chief marketing officer of Apple and is now a venture capitalist at Garage Ventures. It always starts with the title slide, but I'm sure we can skip that. It always starts with identifying the problem. and then talking about your solution, explaining the size of the market and the opportunity ahead of you. Then you talk a little bit about the technology, not at an engineering level, but at a cost-benefits level. Our software is faster, our software is cheaper, our algorithm gets better results. Then you focus on what makes you different to the other people solving this problem. If you're the only person in the world working on this problem, then one of two things has happened. You've forgotten to Google, and you haven't met the other companies, or you're working on something that may be just not interesting enough. Generally, when people say we have no competition, and investors hear you don't know how to do research. Because all over the world, people are creating startups, and many of them are trying to solve the same problem. But what makes you competitive? What is your advantage? Is slide 5. From there, you talk about what the landscape is, who does what in the market. Finally, you move on, slide 7, you move on to the team, then the go-to-market strategy, how you'll get customers, where you've gone and where you're coming from, and finally, the ask. The ask is a very confusing slide for a lot of people. They watch Dragon's Den and think that's good business advice. It's not. Right? The Apprentice isn't good HR, and Dragon's Den isn't how venture capital works. Right? When you talk about investments in the real world, you talk about what you're going to do with the money, on what time frame you're going to do it, and what objective results you're going to have. So instead of saying, "Dear Dragons, my name is Sean from Scarborough, and I'm looking to raise $100,000 to grow my business," you should be saying, "I'm looking to raise $100,000 with which I will enter the United States market to hire 2 or 3 salespeople, which in 6 months will double my current revenue." You don't have to be right. You just have to be reasonable. In 15 years of investing, I've never seen a financial model come true. I've never seen someone's 5-year projections be accurate. And that's okay. As long as they're reasonable, they're built up using real data and real information. They reflect how business really runs, not your ideologies about how you think it should run. These 10 magic slides are the same no matter what you're pitching. The only thing that changes is the data that appears on them. Right? People often want to know, if I only have 20 minutes, how should I break it down? Team is the largest time commitment. People want to know who's the business acumen person, who knows how to run a business, how to grow a business, who's done a startup before. They want to know the person with domain knowledge, who understands the industry, whose insights are you using to innovate with. And then finally, they want someone with the operational side, the coding, the ability to deliver the product, who behind the scenes has built something similar. You want to make sure that you have this balanced talent triangle before you start to grow your business. Because without it, you start to worry, does the market really need this? Can these people build it? Investors are trying to assess 3 major risks, and they assess them at the elevator pitch to the day they write the check. They're trying to assess market risk. If we build this, will anyone care? Will the market buy what we're building? Magic risk. Can we build it? Can we build something that's 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper, 10 times more secure? And finally, where most people get caught up is the management risk. If it's possible to build this, and if the market will buy what we build, are we the best team to bring it to market? Do we have the ability to execute? And so those 3 risks are present in every slide presentation. And it's the team that typically gives people the confidence to move forward, mostly because what's being done isn't being done before. Startups are these temporary organizations geared to find business models that haven't existed before. And they use these slide presentations to ensure that you have covered off not only all elements of your talent triangle, but all elements of the risk that is involved. This is Guy Kawasaki, who came up with the 10 magic rules. He worked for Steve Jobs in the day of the Mac IIs. He came up with what's known as the 10-20-30 rule. Never present more than 10 slides for more than 20 minutes with more than 30-point font. 10 slides because the attention of an investor is only so long. 20 minutes so that you leave time for questions, whether it be a half-hour meeting or a 50-minute meeting. And 30-point font because it's very hard to put too many words on a slide when you're using huge fonts. You don't want to read your slides. You don't want the person to take the slides away as if you were never there. You want your slides to just start the conversation and give them the bullet points to follow. At the heart of the slide presentation, investors want to know a bunch of stuff. And it's your job to communicate them through the 10 magic slides. Things like, is this a real company or is this a product or a feature? Spell check was once pitched as a real company until people realized it was just a feature that would later get integrated. Foursquare thought they could do a business around the idea of location until Facebook started automatically tagging people's locations when they uploaded pictures. What is your vision for the company? What is the product, solution, or service? Why are you better? What is your exponential benefit? We now know unequivocally that the speed of adoption is directly related to the exponential benefit, or in plain English, the better the benefit you offer, the quicker people will adopt. Think back 10, 15 years ago. If you wanted to borrow a video, if you wanted to watch a movie, you went to Blockbuster. But yet 10 years later, they're gone, replaced with Netflix. Why? Because Netflix has 10 times the selection. Netflix has 10 times less late fees. Netflix requires you to wear pants 10 times less when getting a movie. These benefits are exponential, and it's that reason why you see such wide, rapid adoption. What is Google better than? Google is better than what became before, which was hand-created librarian lists locating artifacts in the internet. Why is the iPhone and the iPod so successful? Because they carry 10 times the amount of music, and they're 10 times as well designed. Why did email beat the Postal Service? It was 10 times faster. Why does Wikipedia beat Encyclopedia Britannica? It's 10 times cheaper. It's 10 times more, has more content. The exponential is just a figure of speech. It doesn't actually have to be 10 times. It could be 11. It could be 100. But you want to have these large gaps between what you're suggesting and what already exists. Why? Because what already exists has a market segment. What already exists has cash in the bank. What already exists has customers who have adopted it. Right? Once upon a time, I had Star Wars movies on VHS, and I loved them. And I watched them so much they almost wore out. And then I got DVDs, because DVDs were 10 times better than VHS. And then Blu-ray came along, and I had to decide, would I upgrade, spend all that money? It's the same in the startup world. Does the existing alternative satisfy the need to such an extent that people don't want to buy a new solution? Students adopted Google Docs over Word, not because it was so much better, but because it was cheap. Word was $400 a user. Google Docs is free. What's cheaper than $400? Free. Exponential benefits are what the investors are looking for because they know of the correlation between the exponential benefit to the customer and the speed of adoption. They want to know about your team. They want to know about your addressable market. Are you focused on everyone who drives or only those people who drive electric cars? They want to know what the competition is doing wrong and how that turns into an opportunity for you. They want to understand the business model. Now, many people confuse the business model with the business plan. A business plan is this big 40-page document that no one reads that in the 1980s and 1990s, all entrepreneurship people thought we had to write. That's turned out not to be true. We now use something called a lean canvas or a business model canvas to sort of summarize the information we know about our business. A business model is how your business runs. The business model for Pizza is to take a bunch of ingredients, take a bunch of hourly staff, mix them together, the ingredients, not the staff, and serve it up for a higher price. The business model is cost of goods sold plus cost to get the customer must be bigger than price of the pizza. The business model of Netflix is to license content from Hollywood and give you unlimited access for $9.99. The investors want to understand your business model and how it changes or disrupts what's currently being offered there. They want to understand your ask. They want to understand where you've come from. And they want to find reasons to say no. I hate to break it to you, but our fund is a little teeny fund, and we see about 2,000 deals a year. In the last 36 months, we've done 23. So it's a huge funnel. And so I'm looking immediately for why to say no. What are they missing? because then I can step back and say, this isn't for us. It's the absence of those no's that leads to the yes. It's checking off the box, a good team, a good opportunity, and it matches my sweet spot. That typically leads to good investments. A lot of reasons why investors don't invest you can deal with. Unsophisticated founders, people coming in thinking this is Dragon's Den and they want to give away 1% for $10 million. Unrealistic objectives, we're going to beat Google next year. And lack of traction. One of the most important things that's happened in the last decade or 2 decades since the dot-com boom of 1997, 98, and 99 is the cost to launch a startup has dropped. Right? In 99, I was writing checks for $5 million, and that's what it took and 2 years of work to get the product, the software, the website up and running, because there was no PayPal. There was no Shopify. There was no Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. So you not only had to build your store, but you had to build your transaction model. You had to build how you take credit cards. You had to find customers in the real world because you couldn't just buy Google ads. But over time, as this infrastructure has become more prevalent, the cost has dropped. In 2008, to launch the same company, it didn't take $5 million. It took $500,000. Go forward again in the year 2010, the same software company would take $50,000. And we're now funding companies with $25,000, and it's getting them far enough to prove there's a business there. Because the costs have dropped so dramatically, venture capitalists aren't interested. They're not interested in writing a check for $25,000. They have billion-dollar funds. They can only write checks for 5 or 10 million. If they wrote small checks, they'd have too many companies to babysit. So as a result, venture capitalists have moved upstream and are no longer the first funding. The first funding today is really you, your family, your friends, the founders. Because there's so many more people who can provide $5,000 to $25,000 than there is those that can provide $500,000 to $5 million. So as the cost in dropping the startup launch has gone less and less, the type of investors have changed. More importantly, you can now test your market. Things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, not only do they provide you with capital, right, through crowdsourcing, through crowdfunding. Instead of getting $1 million from one person, you get $1 from 1 million people. But they've also provided market fit. Confirmation that what you're building matters. If people are willing to buy your case for your iPhone before it's even made, if they're willing to give you their money up front, it takes the market risk out of it. If you can ship your first product, your MVP, your prototype, if you can get it into the hands of customers, then I don't have to worry about the magic risk. And if you can get your company into the App Store and getting early sales, then I don't have to worry about management risk. In today's economy, you can get traction, early sales, for thousands of dollars of work instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars of work. So investors expect it. Investors expect you to have already invested your own money, your own time, your own social capital before they're involved. They're not interested in taking the sole risk. So if you're out there pitching, how can you improve your pitch? Here are some of my favorite hints. Use picture language, comparisons, examples. Show positive connections. We're the Uber of Netflix. Right? Leave people with an understanding that they can go away from you with. Describe what you're trying to achieve. Canadian founders are typically known for not having big visions, trying to solve the problem of only left-handed people above the age of 70 instead of all people. Try to differentiate yourself, focusing on your exponential benefit. Make sure you're explaining what's left. No investor thinks you're perfect. Otherwise, you wouldn't need money to help grow. You wouldn't need money to get more staff. You wouldn't need money to test your ideas. So they want to know what you're going to do with the money. What skills do you still lack? What technology or go-to-market do you still lack? Who is missing from the team? If you have nothing missing, why are they funding you? Most of all, you have to make it clear. People overestimate the technical sophistication of investors in the fact that they don't have that much background. You have to be concise. Use fewer words. Remember that investors are going to hear hundreds of pitches. And dress as you usually do. I have seen people try to stand out in the crowd by doing odd things. I would not recommend it. I want to seed our conversation tonight, which is where I want to spend most of my time, by talking about some mistakes that you can avoid, after which I want to open the floor up to just question and answers and talk it through. The number one mistake that I think people make is they don't do enough research matching what they're offering with who's buying. If you go to angellist.co today, you can find 100 angel investors who like children's software. By searching, you can find people who already have an interest in your space. But I will caution you, do not rely on the marketing and promotions of their websites. Look instead on the history of their transactions. The Royal Bank, they say that they're an early stage investor. They love young startups. So when you have $10 million or more in revenue, come see us. You have to look at what they've invested in the last quarter, the last year, the last 6 months, and then match up what you're offering to where they do, what they're looking for. You have to be in their sweet spot. You don't pitch growth capital to someone who's a seed investor. Similarly, if they're a private equity fund, you don't pitch an angel deal. You have to match it up. And this really will help you. So this is a startup life cycle. On the x-axis is time, and on the y-axis, the vertical, is performance or resources. So as you start your business, you're spending resources, time, energy, money. And you are looking for what they call in the modern day problem-solution fit. Problem-solution fit is the first milestone, and it's the first thing that investors want to know. They want to know what proof you have that the solution you're offering is of interest to the people you're solving it for. They want to see people downloading your app even before you're ready to sell it. They want to see people kickstarting before the product is in the storefront. We made an investment to a company on campus called DreamKey. They use that investment to go on crowd-sourcing sites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter. We invested, I think, $25,000 to help them build a prototype and to do the video to promote it. In their campaign, their 90-day campaign, they raised $2.1 million in orders. What's better than my money? Future customers' money. They didn't give up any equity to those future customers. These were pre-sales on a product that doesn't exist. What better proof that you're building something that people will care about than sales before it exists? Problem-solution fit is that, which then gets people to say, well, what if I can't make my product? Well, if your product is code, then you should learn to code. There are courses on campus that are 6 or 7 weeks that can teach you how to do the basic code. You can team up with someone who does code. But trying to raise money to create your prototype in this day and age is a non-starter. By the time you get the problem-solution fit, you need to already have your minimum viable product. So who funds this sort of first stage? This stage that we call customer discovery, where you're trying to make sure that the problem that you're trying to solve matches the solution? You do. Friends, family, founders. These are the sources of this early capital, this first few $1,000s to run experiments. This is where that comes from. Then and only once you have the problem-solution fit can you sort of qualify for seed investments. We're a seed fund, and we don't even look at companies that don't have the prototype and don't have a pilot or two or a few customers already installed. We think you can do that today with the costs that are out there today using Product Hunt and Angel List and Kickstarter by yourself. And even us as a seed fund really focus on getting you to product market fit, which is the next major milestone. So after you find your customers and confirm that the problem you're solving and the solution you're solving it with is worth them using, then you've got to figure out how to sell it, where to sell it, with whom do you sell it, what price do you sell it, how do you get to that point? That point is known as product market fit, when you know the market is buying it the way you're selling it. You don't grow your business, you don't scale up until you have product market fit. Why would you want to sell in 1,000 cities before you've made profit in one city? You want that first part of the curve, that customer discovery, customer validation, to be focused on finding the problem solution fit and then the product market fit. Until you have product market fit, that's when venture capitalists get involved. That's when you raise $2 to $5 million. So in the first phase, this sort of customer discovery, you're really running experiments to confirm your problem and the solution fit together. Then you can get some seed money or some angel money. You might even be able to do some crowdsourcing because you have your minimum viable product. That's where you're getting the 25,000, the 100,000. Once you have found out where you can sell it, how you can sell it, what's the most efficient way to get customers, then you pour in lots of money. Netflix was extremely successful, but it was 2 weeks ago that they expanded to 150 countries. They didn't do that before they had worked out every little detail they thought was necessary. Because if you grow too fast, you're going to end up only exacerbating what you don't know and causing more trouble. So again, this is very much a surprise to many founders because they think venture capitalists are these big risk investors that take huge chances. They're not. The dragons on Dragon's Den and the sharks on Shark Tank aren't even venture capitalists, other than maybe Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary. They're angel investors. An angel investor is someone who invests their own money, typically new money, someone who's had a success already. A venture capitalist is a professional investor who invests a pool of other people's money. Our money that we invest in our fund, yes, some of it is ours, but 90% of it is other sources, other funds that have given us our money. Everybody focuses on a certain area. If you want our fund money, we've told you what area to focus on. If you are looking for friends and family, you focus on the earlier stage. If you're looking for larger amounts, you need to have the proof that you've reached these points. You need to be able to show that you're making more money, lifetime value of a customer, than it costs to get a customer. If you're spending $10 to make $1, then you're losing money every time you sell a product. Before you go and spend millions on marketing, make sure that you're making money each time you sell your product solution. If you want to map it another way, and these are all just different ways to say the same thing, you see the same S-curve. That's the S-curve of the life cycle. They just cut it off earlier. There's another tail here. Right? You start with the valley of death, which they name because it's so depressing. This is where most startups die. They never find their problem solution fit. They never get proof that what they're building matters. And they have to turn first to friends and family and then to angels as they find that. The line is sort of here. This is problem solution fit. This is product market fit. This is when you're scaling. This is where venture capitalists get involved. First, you have the first round funders, the 2 to 5 million. And then you're going to get the 5 to 20 million. Then you get the really big rounds, and then companies go public. The problem for most people is they're over here. And they're not willing to put their own friends and family money in, which makes me wonder why you want me to put my money in if you're not putting your money in. Again, these are all similar slides on the same topic. You need to figure out what phase you're in. Right? Seed, I am still looking for problem solution fit. Early stage, I'm looking for product market fit. Series A, I'm scaling and growing. And these are the sources that you can get the capital from. And it changes regularly, but that information is available generally. Same thing, different picture. The second mistake that I think people fall into, the second trap that people fall into, is they tell things they don't show. They say, everyone loves our product, but they don't explain how they know that. Here's an example. Both of these people pitched, our company is fast growing. The company on your left is Slack, one of the fastest growing companies anywhere in the world. It's run by the Vancouver-born Stuart Butterfield, who formerly founded Flickr, sold to Yahoo. Okay? He shows this slide as his growth over a 12-month period. So he starts with 0 users, and at the end, he's close to the 1 million mark. That's showing people that people love your product. The other guy just simply says people love us. The problem is that every entrepreneur says that. Every entrepreneur has subjective opinions, but it's the objective numbers that help investors understand. People want to see third-party evidence. The best evidence, sales. The second best evidence, pre-orders. The third best evidence, an LOI to buy a large amount of them. You want to be able to provide someone else as proof that what you're building matters. And finally, you want to work on some key numbers that will help you. We call those KPIs, or key performance indicators. How many people go onto your site? How many people sign up for your service? How many people stay on more than a month? How many people get on weekly? These are all KPIs that are used by investors, because today it isn't about the gut check. It's about the data points. The third mistake I've already alluded to, and that's when people ask other people to go first, right? They want investors to put in the money, but they haven't put in their money. They haven't maxed out their credit cards. They haven't taken time off school. They haven't been willing to work full time on it. Today, the cost to launch most products, even before building them, is incredibly small. And people want to know why you haven't done that. People are amazed to hear that YouTube was created on the two credit cards for under $50,000, and within 2 years sold for more than $1 billion. So these are all possible, but they're only possible for a small subset of high growth startups. If you're building a t-shirt company, if you're running a retail outlet, if you're starting a restaurant, none of these will work for you, because the risk doesn't justify the reward. 1 in 10 restaurants succeed, 1 in 100 startups succeeds, but the most successful restaurant's never been sold for $1 billion. So again, you have to match where you are with what you're looking for with who funds that stage of development. There is a ton of information available on the internet in many books. These are some of my favorite deals, favorite books: Pitching Hacks by Venture Hacks, the Venture Deal book, Elevator Pitch Toolkit, and again, we'll make these slides available. Right? I've included a ton of links which will delve deep into all the different topics, including a sample of your elevator pitch, a sample of the slides. I've even got a transcript of a meeting with a VC in there. Okay? There's lots of things that you can rely on. Today, ignorance is no longer bliss. Thank you.